Jake Ludington here, and I'm here with Brad Blumenthal from the HP Data Infrastructure Services Group. You're giving a presentation that sort of had the subtext of 30 days to launch the private cloud. And one of the things that leaps to my mind almost immediately is, because there's a lot of hype about the cloud, everybody wants to be in the cloud, or so they think, but is there sort of an obvious delineation between when you would want to have a cloud infrastructure versus a traditional, like, sort of servers in a rack environment?
That's a good question. I think a lot of that would center on how sophisticated your IT operations are. One of the things that you can do with a cloud infrastructure and highly automated virtualization is create a faster disaster. If you've got poor processes, automating them doesn't somehow make them better. So a large part of that could be, how ready is your IT organization for running that sort of automated, virtualized environment. And that is one of the advantages of the Cloud Start solution that we were talking about, is that we can install a starter kit, if you will, something that can let you get your feet wet, get your hands on what the cloud environment feels like, what does a cubic meter of cloud look like and how does it operate. And you can experiment with it without trying to put mission critical services on it.
One of the things that to me looks like a big challenge is, so you guys have the Matrix product, and then you kind of have some much bigger. How do you help a company identify when they're going to know they need to scale that? Because I assume that if you get one Matrix solution, you can sort of daisy chain them, if you will, together.
That's correct, yeah. HP has a wonderful portfolio, really, from the hardware layer all the way up to the services layer, through software, through the operational processes, the understanding of what people need to be doing and what sort of training they need. So there really is, kind of really the top to bottom set of understanding around that. And you're right, if you've got one blade system matrix chassis in there, a C7000, say, with 16 half blades, you can add expansion packs to it and scale out. Now, to your question about, when do you scale out, there are two answers. One is when your demand profile grows. You get more users, the users you have are running larger jobs, something along those lines. And the other one is when you want to add more services into the mix. And sometimes it's a combination of both. So I'm already running, say, Oracle business apps in there, and now I want to run some data warehousing batch jobs in the background. Well, maybe I need to scale out a bit in order to keep both of them running at good service levels.
So is that one of the components that makes up the software behind the Matrix? Is a sort of traffic shaping isn't the right word, but traffic like measurement?
That is one of the components. It's part of the application monitoring and measuring and metering facilities that we have in the software and in the procedures as well, the processes that we bring to bear here. There's also the application workload characterization that I was referring to at the end of the talk, right? Measuring what the application footprint is, what the demand profile looks like, when people are actually demanding that the thing be used. What's the time criticality? Do I need response times measured in milliseconds, or can I have response times measured in hours, say when I'm doing a big data warehouse type of analysis? So all of those, contribute to knowing when you need to scale and knowing where you're going with your cloud infrastructure.
Do you have any advice for because I talk to more of an influencer type crowd, for the influencers who are trying to kind of coach their management team in the direction of the cloud is the right way to go? Is there any sort of advice you have for them about kind of coaching them along in that process?
Well, sure. Like everything else, results make the difference, right? People want to see something doing something. They want to actually, see it in action. So if you can't convince your decision makers to put in, say, something like a Cloud Start, a little private cloud experimental system that you can actually show them results on, say as a dev and test environment, which is a great candidate workload for a small cloud, or as a software support environment for reproducing customer software problems quickly and reproducing the environment that the customer is running in quickly, which are, again, another great candidate. If you can't do that, then find something that you can take out on the Amazon EC2 cloud or the Google Apps cloud, or some other cloud that's out there. If your marketing department is using Facebook, right, show management how that's actually working for them. Or if you're using something like Flickr or some other SmugMug, some other photo sharing site, and you're putting your photos out there, show your management how that's working for you and how efficient it is and how much money it's saving you over, say, a siloed server infrastructure, and then point out how much more you could be saving if you actually own the infrastructure rather than releasing it. One of the things we found is that if you're using some sort of infrastructure, about 50% of the time for more than 8 weeks a year, it's going to be cheaper to buy it than it is going to be to lease it. It's like renting a car versus owning one. Right? So again, the advice for influencers is show it in action, right? Show how it works.
This is kind of an interesting thing to me that you're actually in some ways recommending people test out on the competition in a sort of try before you buy model. Is this a scenario where it's fairly easy to go if somebody were to deploy, say, on Amazon EC2 or Google App Engine or Rackspace or whoever else? Is it fairly easy to move from their environment then into a private cloud environment when the time comes?
Well, to be fair, I did suggest Cloud Start first, right? But sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. It depends on what you're actually running there. Google, the Google App Engine, not so much, right? That is a unique development environment that requires that environment and their data services in order to run your application. So that really is going to be a throwaway. If you're running an Amazon EC2 and you're running a standard configuration, a standard Linux configuration, standard Windows configuration, maybe a standard Oracle configuration, because I know they've got their database out there, then it's going to be fairly easy to bring it in-house. If you're running on Amazon's big tables, again, you're going to have some problems because you're not going to be able to bring that in-house quite so easily. So it depends. If you're running in something like Facebook and you want to call that the cloud, or Salesforce.com, which is, I guess, one of the poster children for cloud, again, it's going to be much harder to bring that in-house because all that underlying software and all the customization that they've done don't lend itself well to being reproduced internally. But if you go out onto EC2 and you just use a standard Linux distribution with some standard, LAMP stack types of things, Linux, Apache, MySQL, PHP, whatever, it'll be fairly easy to bring that back in because it's a standard environment.
So if you were to pick, say, the top one or two things where people are likely to see like a cost benefit, because I mean, it always comes down to cost, what would those things be?
Well, the ones I just mentioned, I think, are great candidates. Dev and test environments. Just think about the problem if you're putting up a website and you want to test that website on Windows 2000, Windows XP, Windows Vista, Windows 7, and every Internet Explorer version from 6 through 9. And you want to do all those combinations, right? How long would it take you to reconfigure a machine to do that, or even just reboot to different images? Whereas if you've got a cloud infrastructure, you could just call up those images one after another, or have them all basically running at any given time, and you could actually automate the process of doing all that testing. So it could make a huge difference. Again, I used to work in a software support organization, and we had essentially a cloud infrastructure because some of our software ran on HP UX, it ran on Solaris, it ran on Linux, it ran on Windows, it ran on x86, it ran on some other architectures, and being able to configure all of those environments once. It also ran on 2 different databases and 2 different portal servers and 2 different app servers. It was incredible. And the number of combinations there, we just configured them all once, and that way when a support guy needed access to a particular environment, he could call up that image, and instead of taking 3 days to provision and reproduce a customer environment, it took 3 minutes. And that just was a huge, huge help in that instance. So that's another good example. There are a number of other ones if you're looking at things like advanced analytics, beyond data warehousing and data mining. There are now some new analytic techniques, that Google has come up with MapReduce, or the Apache Foundation's Hadoop software. Another good application for the cloud because it's one of those things that can be run in background while you're running more critical services like desktops in foreground. So there are a lot of good applications, and again, it depends on what the company is doing. It depends on what their pain points are. Certainly help come in and talk about that and come up with some ideas.
Excellent. Well, thanks, Brad.
Thank you very much, Jake.